Welcome to the course, Culturally Responsive Built Environments. Today, we are taking up a lecture on the winter cities, but from a design for all perspective. In our previous lecture, we did talk about how the winter urbanism, the aspects of landscapes keep changing from season to season, and how a barrier becomes path and path becomes barrier in different seasons, and how it also have both advantages and the disadvantages, especially the disadvantage when we are talking about in terms of its mobility patterns, how it affects the mobility patterns of the elderly people or the normal people, even some of the people from different places who are residing in those countries. And this is actually because of the harsh winter climates. And there are two things. One, we talk about it has been a disadvantaged groups in the society. One is the physically differently abled, so groups who have some different abilities, walking disability or any other kind of abilities. And the other one is also the migrant societies who are coming from a different social diverse backgrounds. Imagine in Sweden, in fact, it has contributed a certain percentage of its GDP to encourage the refugees and the asylums to be able to, they have given shelter for certain people, and then people, if you can find a lot of ghettos formed in Stockholm area, and nowadays they are taking a challenge of how they can upgrade through these kind of upgrade their downtrodden settlements, and how they can occupy with these, so provide shelter, and so that they can certain activities could be promoted further. Now, in terms of regulations and the guidelines in Swedish context, one is we talk about the Boverket, which is the guidelines which is issued by the Swedish National Board of Housing, Building and Planning. And that is where we talk on accessibility and usability in public spaces. And there is also on the Handisam, which is of guidelines of accessibility, break the barriers, which is actually through the Swedish Agency of Disability and Policy Coordination. When you look at all this, mostly you will see a kind of similarities what European models talk about. But the biggest question is, can they work in snow and ice conditions? Let's, for example, I show you in my previous lecture, I did briefly explain about this. And there's not much of literature has been provided, especially in the Nordic countries context, in the winter urbanism aspect. And if you look at on the left-hand side, yes, as per the guidelines, yes, they have provided ramp for the disabled people to go to the shopping place. But 8 months of the time, or 6 to 8 months of the time, it is not used by anyone because it is completely covered with the snow. Now, similarly with the children play areas during winter, so they do have, each and every neighborhood have the children taught lots, but 6 to 8 months is the same story. Children hardly go there, except a few places where they make a snow mounds and play. But what happened to all the infrastructure and the maintenance of it? So this is one observation which has actually opened a new dimension of thinking towards the winter urbanism, and that is where I started thinking on the accessibility issues. And myself and one of my colleague of Glenn Bergod, he is a specialist in the accessibility component, and especially with the footwear and some of the tools, assistive tools. So I started working with him, and so we started looking at the accessibility issue, not just a ramp or a connection, but looking at in a much more on a cultural environment. So how winters can influence? Now, one is people often get sick in winters because much of the time they fell down because of slippery surfaces, especially sometimes many of my friends who are new to the climate, and They don't know what kind of clothes they have to wear, what kind of remedies they have to take, and how to walk, and what kind of shoes they have to wear. In winter, normally we do wear some kind of shoes with spikes, and even they change the car tires with the winter spikes in it. And like that, there's different adaptable practices. So many of the foreigners who come to visit these places may or may not be aware, and most of the times they end up falling down, getting damaged, fractures in their bones. And then the second one is the psychological effects. In the psychological effects, because most of the 6 to 8 months time, you don't see light. Hardly morning 7 o'clock, I used to go to office, I hardly see sun. And evening 5:30 or 6, I am coming back from office, I hardly see any sun. So basically, we are living in mostly in the night. Hardly 1 hour, 1.5 hours, we get a sun, a very light, I can say. And this in turn, because being only in home, this causes depression. And so that's how you can see many of the depressive cases in the Nordic countries as well, though it is referred as one of the in the happiest second happiest country in the world, but still you can see the depression because of the natural weather conditions. And that is what the Boris Kuljat and Lar Felskin, they talked about. The solution lies is living within the climate, not in spite of it. So how we can actually live with the climate is basically, and how we can make and create maintaining attractive places where differently abled people can comfortably participate and experience the winter activities. For instance, I remember in my university, if I want to go to one block to another block, they also had a cellar connection. So in winter, you can just, instead of going out, you can walk around. But then people's attitude started changing in these days. Now they say, why not open an outside? Why not see the snow? Why not see the light? So that attitude itself is giving some courage to participate in winter. And the challenge here for the urban designers or the placemakers is how to create these places much more accessible, not only for the normal abled people, but also differently abled people, and also different cultural groups who are coming from different places. Now, this is where we started looking at what approach actually suits for us in understanding this whole phenomenon. So we started investigating of, you look at this, the cartoon, how if there is a passage, but then if I can see that if he doesn't shovel this snow, no one can get in, right? So it's all about also to do with the maintenance aspect. So we started looking at what approaches one can look into it. So one is we talk about the universal design approach, where kind of one solution for almost all the issues. So when you can access that. But whereas the inclusive, where I would say there are tailored for each particular issue, and different solutions start emerging in an inclusive approach, and different stakeholders start taking part in it. And here I'm looking at a kind of design for all approach. So this is where design for all, because here I mean of all, it's not only for the disabled or the differently abled people, it's also the culturally, how it could be, the places could be culturally adaptable, and it can empower various other stakeholders to take part into it in the design process. So that is how we started rethinking the concept of design for all, but in all weather conditions. Now, Glenn and myself, we started looking at a framework, how we can actually establish and look at this winter urbanism from kind of three-dimensioned umbrella side of it. So one is, we are not looking at just a building point of it, but we are also looking from the settlement layouts, which is a physical dimension, and the building design. Whereas the other one, which we are looking at the social dimension, especially where the migrant population from different nationalities come together and they are participating in this space, how it could be accessible and how they respond to it, right? And the third important thing which we brought is the maintenance, So in fact, the social diversities and the abilities how they possess to access certain spaces and how the maintenance for summer and the winter times do change. So this is how maybe for the first time of our kind, this work started looking at this. And then what we did was we made a kind of, we taken a small town in Nordic region. It's a kind of on one side we looked at various, and this was actually developed through a thesis. One of our master student of Lucille Balanjat, where she looked at the culturally adaptable spaces for all. And on one side, this is the built environment component, and then on one side you have the maintenance aspect of it, how it is influencing this built form. Another side, how the built form is in correspondence with the social diversity. So, and that's how we looked at the outcomes of it. So this is a framework which we started working on. Now, the biggest challenge is now how to enable these our built environments accessible to all in all weather conditions. So it might be accessible in summer, but may not be in winter. And this is the challenge. Like for instance, I start giving you some certain examples where now you look at both the cases. Now I have shown you a cases where it has hindered the access, but in the same winter, you can see how the still ramp is in the sports complex, so it's still a way for the people to access, right? So this is informing, and these are some of the observations we started looking at, and we started understanding that how come these are not filled with snow? How only those buildings fronts are filled with snow and it is not accessible, and how these are accessible in the same time. So this is how, and then we looked at a kind of one is the sociological and behavioral outcome. So what kind of potential risks and what kind of impacts on the social behaviors of the inhabitants. And the spatial outcome, we talk about analyze the built form compositions and how they support or not support for all users. And similarly, an applied outcome, so how we can inform these things, so which is actually published in various papers. So as I explained to you in the previous lecture, we did a kind of small exercise within our studio network where we studied the portion route, and one of our students have actually drawn a very interesting work, how with the help of David Chapman, he developed a kind of notation guidance how we can denote the winter spaces. So with that, we gave to students and they started working on different areas of the city, and they started establishing what are the various routes, how they change in time, and what kind of activities do take place. Now, coming to the Lucille's work, which is talking about culturally adaptable public places for all in all climatic conditions. Here, this is a small village where I also used to live. This is Råneå, and you can see the Råneå River, which is actually passing by. And here, it's a very small village, but then much of if you look at the inhabitants compared to the Luleå, which is the district headquarter sort of thing, and in a small town, the total is about 2,000 inhabitants, and which 129, and we have, this is a brief statistics of according to the 2013. And how about the snow depth? If you look at the snow depth from a series of years by various months, how it is changing. So we get all the information from the the meteorological departments and all other websites, related governmental websites. So we see the statistics of what is the kind of snow cover and how it is changing from a month to month, and even we also get the statistics from years to year. So the temperature also, it keeps changing, so it becomes harsh in the month of January to February, and whereas from May onwards it keeps changing, April, May, it keeps changing. So now what she did was she started first mapping down all the public spaces. What are the various activities, where do people gather around, and where do you can see the pathways, how the pathways goes on, the recreational path, how it goes on to a very long distances, and how the what kind of central squares they have, and how the skating park, the ice hockey field, so all these things she mapped about all the aspects of it. And for instance, I'll give you a brief about, and this is a Råneå church, and the passage which is cleared, but you can see the slippery, it's very slippery in the winter condition, and it will be very dark. In fact, some of the tunnels passing under by, most of the times they are very slippery because this is not properly maintained, so it's difficult for anyone to even walk down sometimes. And even the light, so in fact, lighting is one important aspect which the Nordic countries focus on, because to make their places more attractive, so they otherwise with the darkness they might met with some accidents, or they also get some kind of depression. So most of the time they focus more on the lighting aspect, so it provides certain safety and security. And how the seasonal changes, so in fact, during the summertime, they open these swimming pools, which is the children's swimming pool on the outdoor swimming pool, whereas the winter time they have within the city, right? So basically, they have both winter swimming pool and the summer swimming pool, and people prefer to go on the outdoor swimming pool during the summers, where they would like to see sky, play with children together, and lie on the lawn, things like that. And she mapped out with some kind of annotations like, the 365 days open spaces, and the summer public open spaces, and the winter public open spaces. And there is also one more thing called in between seasons. The summer and winter, there are certain places where, because of in the transition time, how certain spaces act as a kind of interactive zones. And so what they did was, she looked at the street networks and various hierarchies. So these are some of the built components. And then summer use, winter use, and in-between seasons use, and also the night use. So how a space is used in the night times, right? And how people feel safe about it. And that is how she have done a survey of it. And similarly, she have used all different ice hockey rink, rivers, lakes, football, the whole settlement. From a settlement layout pattern onwards, she identified different pockets of it and started understanding that. And then also, these are some of the mental maps. Like she has started taking from various refugees and the local people, how they have perceived this space, what is the most important movement patterns, how they get it. So now you can see here, people started talking about the shortcuts, like in fact you have a road. Now what they do is, instead of going like this, they walk in the snow like this during the winter. So it's a kind of shortcut. So they talk about their favorite ways of going, and so in that way the passage patterns, how they would like to see, how the connectivity patterns has to be established and the maintained. So these mind maps are provided of what is important to them. For instance, they have talked about main church, how they go around, because school wagon, and the Arctic swimming pool. So basically they're talking about these, and the church which they normally go for it. So basically this movement patterns during the winter and the summer times have actually provided them that what is their understanding of that place, how the place is legible for them in both seasons. Now you can see here he talks about barbecue summer. So in the summertime what they're doing is, they're putting a barbecue, and they are so indicating from the residents how they are traveling around. So that has given some information of how people move around. So in that note, collecting all this information of samples, what Lucille have started working is on a kind of general appreciations of winter, on both the potentials and the weakness and the recommendations part of it. So in fact, when we talk about appreciation of winter, yes, it is in terms of it is the winter sun, the snow, and at the same time, the following recommendation, she talks about how it is depressing and how it is tiring walking in winter and walking in winter, so this is where she talks about how we can educate for winter, and similarly what kind of equipment we use for the winter mobility, like kick sledges, and what are the weaknesses, risks of slipping or falling. So again, how we can talk about the surface maintenance, and similarly we talk about like that she talked about activities, social interactions, and mutual help. So mutual help is one of the important aspect, because especially with the refugee, the migrants from different nations, they always try to have some kind of mutual support systems. If something happens to someone, at least 2-3 other people of the same region, they could able to help them, and also the local people, they also could able to offer some support to them and guide them how to go further, despite of language and also language barriers and different conditions of these culturally different people, how they are coming from. Some of them are coming from Afghanistan, some of them from Ethiopia, some of them are coming from Cuba. So how all these nationalities can come together and how they develop a common vocabulary in understanding and managing a winter space. Now, some of the challenges when we started looking at the winter spaces is you have the city center, the bus stand is clear, but then the passage to the bus stand is not cleared in the morning. So that is where we started looking at how the maintenance issues, the maintenance dimension, how it can look into the winter city component. So now it has, number one, these are the following different actions taken by the maintenance department. So first of all, they clear the snow in all the streets, roads, and the pathways. Then they dispose gravels or sand as an anti-slip treatment, because what they do is it's not only clearing the snow, because the moment it gets into ice condition, so people get often slips from the surface. So what they do is they dump the gravel, little tiny gravel pieces or some sand, so that it can protect them from skidding, and make accessible and usable various street furniture as benches or tot. So what they do is, in winter time, many of the time in some places they take these already in existing street furniture, because it is very difficult to maintain, because the snow heals up. So even the contractor who is taking away the snow, he may not be able to see that there is a street furniture. So for the maintenance purposes, sometimes they change the positions and keep in a better locations, and remove the snow piling, because the moment you don't, especially during the Christmas time, if it is a holiday time, 2-3 days if they don't come, then it's almost like you can't see the building also. And not only about winter, after winter, again removing the gravels, that is again a process. It's a continuous process. And remove once a year the thick ice all roads, right? So these are all some various processes which they talk about. Now here we've collected some maps, from myself and Lucille went to the departments. We collected some, how they actually follow, what are the routines they follow, what are the protocols they follow. Like you can see here that they're all marked in different, this is a kind of state, highways which are marked in red, whereas Bostad, Gunter, so this is all near these houses are all in the dwelling, the neighborhood. So like that, each, like you can see these of the pathways, so in that way, they're all segregated from the state level network to the neighborhood network to the pathways. So what they do is they have developed different timings. They have developed different timings for it. Like now, who takes the responsibility? Within these maintenance things, like within that they have segregated into different aspects. Now, in the whole, what we did was we started mapping down of both the stakeholders of both the public and the private aspects. Now here we are talking about the traffic worker which talks about the national roads, because in the national highways they're all taking care of the national roads, and where there's a Tekniska for rethinking, which talks about the division, street and traffic, and within that they have the real estate. So here you can see the communal roads are taken by this department, and where the properties around the bus station, care and retirement homes, schools, this is different. And again the county property around the health center, recreational department, total art. So like that there are different actors of it. Now what happens is, in the maintenance, that hierarchical process of various from national level to the local level actors, so different contracts have been signed with different entrepreneurs and different subcontractors, and the local instructions are also specified. For instance, what hour, like from morning 6 on, before morning 6 they have to clear certain highway route or the county routes, but then after 9 maybe the neighborhood will be cleared out. And also details of special precautions also have given some guidance to do in a smaller, to take when maintaining small areas, for instance like school. Now here the different hours before which each kinds of roads preparation should be done, or at even smaller scale. I'll show you an example. And in this, what is happening is, with all these vertical processes, there is no coordination between these vertical hierarchies. On one side, the maintenance aspect of it, national level roads and the communal level roads, all to the neighborhood level roads. There's not much of coordination and coming, because each of them are different. They just clean out. So what happens, like for instance, you can see here the territories. Here, this road is cleared by 6 o'clock or 7, but they keep the barrier here, so the people who are living here, they cannot pass through. So that is the main disadvantage. So despite of having clearance, this is done by a different contractor and this is by a different contractor. On the city level, the near the bus stop area is done by a different contractor. So they obviously have the barriers. Only at 9 o'clock he will come and delete this particular, take away the snow. So those are the, in fact, problems which we find. And then, now for example in the school, now they know first what they have to take, and they also identified these are the elements which are most damageable, right, easily damageable. So they will always talk about the protocols, how you should take the snow first, what part of the building you have to take the snow first, and then the second, and then the third, and how you have to roam around. But you see here, when they build the building, have they thought about this maintenance processes? Or have after building the building, now the maintenance processes, the guidance is embedding within it. So that is where a position to start rethinking about the winter urbanism is needed, because it is, when we are designing a building level also and its premises, we have to talk about how we can integrate the maintenance aspect also. Like for some of the kind of black spots, like you can see the gradient of a little slope, and many of the people who have fallen. So what we did was, through our interviews, we identified certain black spots in the city where they have frequently fallen down, and we will try to analyze what are the reasons behind it through their slope analysis and irregular slopes. And because normally people, when you have this, people try to cross over in this direction rather than this direction. So in that way, some of the black spots have been created. So what we recommended then is a kind of, we need a clear coordination between the local municipalities and the Department of Building and Planning and other Department of Street and Traffic, that has to be further enhanced. And there's a great need for the design professions to rethink and how to integrate the maintenance process and social diversity, especially with the coming from cultural, not only the differently abled, but also from culturally different backgrounds, and how to engage them in the placemaking process. And that is what we see. We could know how, we will know better how a community needs and wants. So we need to develop more innovative methods, and how the children can come, people and children can come participate even during winters. So that is how we look forward to deliberating for attractive winter cities. Thank you very much.